The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through them, her black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the colorful robes and natural coverings of the other species around her. The chamber was huge, built to hold representatives from dozens of different worlds. Crystal formations jutted from the walls, glowing with soft blue light that worked for most species' vision. Elena took her seat in the human section. It was still new, still small. Humanity had only joined the Galactic Council 15 years ago. Before that, Earth was just another world on the edge of known space, a primitive planet where the locals had barely figured out how to travel between stars. The Saurian delegate, Kreshmar, stood at the center podium. His reptilian scales shifted from green to dark red as he spoke. This meant he was angry or scared. Elena had learned to read the basic emotions of the major species during her training. "The situation grows worse each day," Kreshmar said, his voice carrying through the chamber's translation system. "The Catherian Empire has taken another 3 systems. Our combined fleets cannot stop them. They move through our defenses like we are not even there." Murmurs filled the chamber. The crystalline Vorthak delegates made sounds like wind chimes in a storm. The gas-breathing Nethys floated in their containment suits, their tentacles writhing, with worry. Elena had seen this same meeting play out dozens of times over the past 3 years. Always the same reports. Always the same fear. Admiral Chen of the Council Defense Fleet took the podium next. He was Vorthak, his crystal body reflecting the chamber's light in rainbow patterns. When he spoke, his voice sounded like music, but the words were grim. "We have lost 47 major warships this month alone," Admiral Chen said. "The Catherians' biomechanical technology adapts to our weapons too quickly. Their psychic warriors can take control of our crew's minds. We estimate their forces now control over 60 inhabited systems." Elena listened to the numbers. Billions of people dead or enslaved. Entire civilizations wiped out or absorbed into the Catherian Empire. The war had been going on for 3 standard years now, and the Council forces were losing badly. The Catherians were an old race. They had been building their empire for thousands of years before humans even learned to make fire. Their ships were alive, grown rather than built. The hulls could heal damage in minutes. The weapons learned from each battle and became stronger. Worst of all, their crews could reach into the minds of enemy soldiers and turn them into allies. "What about the new defense platforms around Nexus Prime?" asked Senator Thilla of the Etherian Republic. Her people looked almost human, except for their silver skin and completely black eyes. "Surely they can hold the line if the Catherians reach this far." Admiral Chen's crystal body dimmed, which meant sadness or despair. "The platforms were designed to fight conventional enemies. The Catherian bioships simply ignore most of our defensive systems. They phase through energy shields and absorb kinetic impacts." More worried sounds filled the chamber. Elena had been to many of these meetings, but today felt different. Today felt desperate. Counselor Prime Vexna stood up. She was ancient, even by the standards of her long-lived species. The Zephyrians lived for thousands of years, and Vexna had been leading the council for over 8 centuries. Her 6 arms gestured gracefully as she spoke. "We must face the truth," Vexna said. "Our traditional methods of warfare are not working. The Catherians have adapted to every strategy we have tried. Perhaps it is time to consider other options." Elena felt dozens of alien eyes turn toward the human section. She knew what was coming. It happened every time the council got desperate. Enough. They would ask the newest members to contribute something. Usually it was resources or industrial support. This time, Elena suspected they wanted more. "Ambassador Vasquez," Vexna said, "your species has remained neutral in this conflict. We understand that humanity is still developing its military capabilities. However, we must ask if Earth would consider joining our defense efforts." Elena stood up slowly. The chamber became quiet. Even the background hum of the life support systems seemed to fade. She looked around at the assembled delegates. Hundreds of beings from dozens of worlds, all representing civilizations that were thousands of years older than humanity. All of them afraid. "Counselor Prime," Elena said, her voice steady, "humanity has been watching this war very carefully. We have studied the Cytherian tactics. We have analyzed their technology. We have learned about their history and their goals." She paused, letting her words sink in. The translation systems carried her voice to every species in their own language. "The Council asks if humanity will join your defense efforts," Elena continued. "But we think you are asking the wrong question." Confused sounds came from around the chamber. Saurian scales shifted colors. Vorthak crystals flickered. The Nethys delegates huddled closer together in their gas-filled suits. "What do you mean, Ambassador?" Vexna asked. Elena took a deep breath. What she was about to say would change everything. It would either save the galaxy or destroy humanity's place in it. "You should not be asking if humanity will join your defense," Elena said. "You should be asking if you will accept humanity's leadership in this war." The chamber erupted. Angry shouts and protests filled the air. The Saurian delegates hissed loudly. Several Etherian senators stood up and pointed at Elena. Even the normally calm Vorthak crystals flashed with bright, angry light. "This is outrageous," shouted General Kethvar of the Saurian Military Council. "Humans have barely learned to travel between stars. Your species discovered fusion power only 200 years ago. Your largest warship has fewer weapons than our escort vessels," added Commander Schill of the Etherian Navy. "What could humanity possibly offer that our combined fleets cannot provide?" Elena waited for the noise to die down. She remained standing, calm and patient. This was exactly the reaction she had expected. These ancient civilizations could not imagine that a young species like humanity might have something they lacked. "General Kethvar is correct," Elena said when the chamber was quiet again. "Humanity's technology is primitive compared to yours. Our ships are slower, our weapons are weaker, and our defenses are basic." She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from each major species. "But there is something the Council forces lack," Elena continued. "Something that no amount of advanced technology can replace. Something the Cytherians have never faced before." "And what is that?" Vexna asked. Elena smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the kind of smile that would have made any human in the room very nervous. "Desperation," Elena said. "You fight this war like civilized beings. You follow rules of engagement that are thousands of years old. You worry about honor and proper conduct. You treat war like a formal dance between enemies who respect each other." The chamber was completely silent now. Every delegate was listening carefully. "Humanity does not fight that way," Elena said. "We come from a world where everything tries to kill us. Our weather, our animals, our diseases, even our plants are dangerous. We learned to survive by doing whatever it takes. We learned that there are no rules when your species faces extinction." "You speak of barbarism," said Senator Thilla. "Civilized beings do not abandon all principles in warfare." "Civilized beings are losing this war," Elena replied. "Your principles and your honor mean nothing to the Cytherians. They enslave entire populations and turn captured worlds into breeding grounds for their bioships. They do not respect your rules of war." Elena walked to the center of the chamber, taking the main podium. Every eye in the room followed her. "The Council has fought the Cytherians for 3 years using traditional tactics," she said. "Fleet battles in open space, honorable duels between captains, careful protection of civilian populations, measured responses to enemy actions." She paused, letting the weight of their failures settle on the assembled delegates. In those 3 years, you have lost 60 star systems. The Catherian Empire has grown stronger with each victory. They adapt to your tactics because your tactics are predictable. You fight the way civilized species have always fought. What are you suggesting? Admiral Chen asked. His crystal body was pulsing with nervous energy. I am suggesting that this war cannot be won by civilized means, Elena said. The Catherians have evolved beyond conventional warfare. They use biological weapons, mind control, and terror tactics. They turn your own people against you. They corrupt entire worlds to serve their purposes. Elena's voice grew stronger, more forceful. If you want to defeat an enemy like that, you need soldiers who understand what it means to fight without limits. You need warriors who care more about winning than about looking honorable while they lose. The chamber was so quiet that Elena could hear the breathing of species that actually needed to breathe. Humanity offers to lead this war effort, Elena said. We will coordinate all council forces under human command. We will plan the strategies and choose the tactics. We will decide which battles to fight and which sacrifices to make. And in return? Vexna asked. In return, you must accept that we will not fight this war the way you would fight it, Elena said. We will use methods that might disturb you. We will make choices that civilized species consider unthinkable. We will do whatever it takes to win. General Kethvar stood up, his scales bright red with anger. You ask us to hand control of our fleets to a species that has never fought a real war. Humans have only had conflicts on your own world. You know nothing of space combat. Elena nodded. That is true, General. We have never fought in space before, but we have fought for survival on Earth for millions of years. We know how to fight enemies that are bigger, stronger, and more advanced than we are. She looked directly at the Saurian general. Your species evolved on a world with gentle weather and abundant food. You developed technology to make your lives more comfortable. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We developed technology to help us kill our enemies first. Elena turned to address the entire chamber again. The Catherians have never faced an enemy that thinks like humans do. They have conquered species that fight with honor and follow ancient traditions. They have never fought a species that sees war as just another survival problem to solve. This is madness, whispered Commander Schill. You speak of abandoning everything that separates us from mere animals. Animals survive, Elena said simply. Civilized species become extinct. The silence stretched on for long minutes. Elena could see the delegates struggling with her words. These species had built their entire societies on the idea that civilization meant rising above primitive instincts. The thought of deliberately returning to those instincts horrified them. But they were also terrified of the Catherians, and they were running out of options. Finally, Counselor Prime Vexna spoke. If the Council agrees to this proposal, what would humanity need from us? Complete authority over all military operations, Elena said without hesitation. Access to all intelligence about Catherian capabilities, and a promise that you will not interfere with our methods, no matter how disturbing you find them. And if we refuse? Admiral Chen asked. Elena's smile returned, cold and predatory. Then you will lose this war, she said. The Catherians will eventually reach every council world. Your civilizations will be destroyed or absorbed, and humanity will retreat to Earth and prepare for the day when they come for us too. She looked around the chamber one more time. But when they do come for us, they will face an enemy that does not care about fighting fairly. They will face a species that learned to survive by being more dangerous than anything else on our world. Elena walked back to her seat, leaving the council delegates to discuss humanity's offer. She knew the vote would be close. Many species would refuse to accept human leadership. They would rather lose with honor than win through methods they considered barbaric. But Elena also knew that fear was stronger than pride. The Catherians were coming, and traditional methods had failed. Soon, the Council would have to choose between their principles and their survival, and when they made that choice, the galaxy would learn why humanity had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain. They would learn what it meant to fight an enemy that had nothing left to lose. The war was about to change, and somewhere in the void between stars, ancient things that had slept for millennia began to stir in response to the chaos that was coming. Captain Marcus Shaw stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical display show enemy positions in the Epsilon reticuli system. The Council had given humanity command of the war effort 3 months ago. The vote had been closer than Elena expected, but fear of the Catherians had won in the end. Now Shaw was about to prove whether humanity deserved that trust. "Report, Commander Hayes," Shaw said to his second-in-command. Commander Sarah Hayes looked up from her station. She was young for her rank, but she had earned her position during the border wars on Earth. Those conflicts had taught humanity valuable lessons about fighting enemies with superior technology. "Catherian biofleet detected at the edge of the system," Hayes reported. 37 primary vessels, estimated crew of 40,000. Their ships are showing the standard organic configurations we studied in the archives. Shaw nodded. The Catherian ships looked like massive sea creatures made of metal and flesh. They moved through space like living things, flowing and shifting rather than flying in straight lines. Each ship was unique, grown rather than built, with weapons that evolved during battle. "What about the Council observers?" Shaw asked. "Admiral, Chen's task force is holding position at the designated coordinates," Hayes said. "The Saurian and Etherian fleets are standing by as requested. They have orders to observe only unless we specifically request assistance." Shaw smiled grimly. The alien allies were nervous about human tactics. They wanted to see how humanity fought before committing their own forces. That was fine with Shaw. He preferred to work without interference from species that thought war should be polite. "Lieutenant Torres, status of the minefield?" Shaw called to his weapons officer. "All charges placed and armed, Captain," Torres replied. "The gravitic mines are positioned at the 3 most likely hyperspace exit points. If the Catherians drop out of FTL where our computers predict, they will emerge directly into the field. Other human ships in the fleet were small compared to Council vessels. Earth's technology was primitive, but humans had learned to use it efficiently. The ships were fast, maneuverable, and built for tactics that no other species would consider." "Captain," called Ensign Kim from the communications station, "the Catherians are sending a message on the standard diplomatic frequency." "Put it through," Shaw said. The main screen shifted to show a Catherian commander. The alien was tall and pale, with elongated limbs and features that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Cybernetic implants covered half its face, and its eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "I am War Singer Thessian of the Catherian Empire," the alien said. Its voice sounded like music, but there was something wrong with the harmony. "I address the primitives who dare to challenge our advance." Shaw stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "This is Captain Marcus Shaw of the United Earth Fleet," he replied. "You are in violation of Council space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Thessian made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your species fascinates us, humans," Thessian said. "We have studied your pathetic attempt at civilization. You fight wars on your own world with primitive weapons. You have never faced true power." The Catherian leaned closer to the camera, its glowing eyes focusing on Shaw. "We will add your minds to our collective consciousness," Thessian continued. "Your thoughts will serve the Empire for eternity. Your bodies will be improved and given purpose in our fleets." "Counteroffer," Shaw said calmly. "Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick and clean." Thessian's expression changed. The flowing features hardened into something more recognizably angry. "You mock us? Your tiny ships cannot threaten vessels that have conquered 1,000 worlds." "We will see," Shaw said. "Shaw out." The communication ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Shaw turned to his crew. "All ships, this is Shaw. Execute Protocol Alpha on my mark. Remember, we are not here to fight fair. We are here to win." Shaw watched the tactical display as the Catherian fleet began its approach. The bioships moved in a formation that had been successful against Council forces dozens of times. They arranged themselves in a spiral pattern that allowed their psychic warriors to support each other while their weapons covered all angles of attack. "Hyperspace signatures detected," Torres reported. "The Catherians are preparing to jump to close combat range." This was the moment Shaw had been waiting for. Council forces always met their enemies in open space, fleet against fleet in what amounted to naval battles fought with energy weapons. It was civilized, predictable, and completely ineffective against the Catherians. Humanity had different ideas about how to fight. "Mark," Shaw said quietly. The first part of Protocol Alpha began immediately. Instead of meeting the Catherians in battle, the human fleet scattered. Ships broke formation and fled in different directions, moving at maximum speed away from the enemy. Shaw could imagine the confusion on the Council observer ships. To them, it looked like humanity was running away before the battle even began. The aliens had probably expected as much from a primitive species. The Catherians were confused too. Thessian's fleet pursued the fleeing humans, but they could not catch all the ships at once. The bio-vessels split up, chasing different targets across the star system. That was exactly what Shaw wanted. "Phase 2, Shaw ordered. The human ships that had fled toward the outer system suddenly reversed course. But instead of returning to fight, they began deploying equipment they had carried in their cargo holds. Sensor buoys, communication jammers, and most importantly, gravity well generators. Within minutes, the entire star system became a maze of artificial gravity fields and electronic interference. The Catherian ships found themselves cut off from each other, unable to coordinate their psychic attacks or maintain their formation. "Phase 3, Shaw said. Now the real fight began, but it was not the kind of fight the galaxy had ever seen before. The human ship UES Vengeance, commanded by Captain Rodriguez, was being pursued by a Catherian bio-cruiser 3 times its size. Instead of turning to fight, Vengeance led the alien ship through an asteroid field where the humans had placed hidden kinetic charges. The explosions did not destroy the Catherian ship, but they damaged its living hull and confused its biological sensors. While the bio-cruiser was trying to heal itself, Vengeance doubled back and launched a spread of nuclear missiles. But these were not ordinary nuclear weapons. The warheads had been modified with a virus that attacked biological systems. When they detonated against the Catherian hull, the explosions spread infection through the ship's living tissue. Captain Chen, commanding the UES Retribution, faced a different challenge. His ship was smaller and faster than his opponent, but the Catherian vessel was trying to get close enough to use its psychic weapons on his crew. Chen's solution was simple and brutal. He activated his ship's self-destruct system and aimed Retribution directly at the Catherian bioship. The alien commander, assuming no sane being would sacrifice their own life to win a battle, did not take evasive action until it was too late. Retribution's nuclear reactor overloaded just as the ship struck the Catherian vessel. The explosion tore through both ships, killing everyone aboard, but it also took out one of the most dangerous enemies in the Catherian fleet. Shaw watched the battle unfold from his position near the system's primary star. The Defiance was running silent, hidden in the solar radiation, while other human ships drew the Catherians into carefully prepared traps. "Captain," Hayes reported, "we are receiving surrender requests from 3 Catherian vessels. Their bioships are too damaged to continue fighting." "Denied," Shaw said without hesitation. "Continue the attack until all enemy vessels are destroyed." Hayes looked surprised. In civilized warfare, surrender was always accepted. Prisoners were treated according to ancient codes of honor that all species respected. "Sir," Hayes said carefully, "the Council Accords require us to accept surrender when offered." Shaw turned to face his second-in-command. His expression was cold and hard. "Commander, the Catherians do not take prisoners. They absorb captured crews into their collective consciousness. They turn enemy civilians into breeding stock for their bio-ships. They have never shown mercy to anyone they have defeated." Shaw pointed at the tactical display where burning Catherian ships were, still trying to escape. "We will not give them the chance to regroup and attack again later. This is not a civilized war, Commander. This is extermination." The final phase of the battle was the most disturbing for the Council observers. As the damaged Catherian ships tried to retreat, the human fleet hunted them down one by one. There were no dramatic duels or honorable last stands. The humans simply destroyed every enemy vessel they could find, using whatever methods were most efficient. When Thessian's command ship tried to escape through hyperspace, it found that the humans had mined all the jump points. The bioship was torn apart when it tried to enter FTL while surrounded by gravitic distortions. The battle ended after 6 hours. Every Catherian vessel was destroyed. The human fleet had lost 8 ships and nearly 3,000 crew members. But they had achieved something the Council forces had never managed: a complete victory with no enemy survivors. Shaw stood on his bridge looking at the debris field that had once been a Catherian battle fleet. His communications officer was receiving messages from the Council observer ships, but Shaw ignored them for now. "Damage report," he ordered. "Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12, Torres reported. "Engineering reports the reactor is running at 60% efficiency. We will need major repairs before the next engagement." "Casualty report," Shaw asked Hayes. 47 dead, including Captain Chen and his entire crew. Hayes said quietly. 138 wounded. Medical teams are working to save as many as they can." Shaw nodded. The losses were heavy, but they were acceptable. In civilized warfare, such casualties would be considered a disaster. For humanity, they were the price of victory. "Captain," Ensign Kim called from communications. "Admiral Chen is requesting permission to come aboard. The Council observers want to discuss the battle." Shaw sighed. He had been expecting this. The aliens would want to understand how humanity had achieved such a decisive victory. They would also want to express their concerns about human methods. "Grant permission," Shaw said. "And Kim, prepare a full battle report for transmission to Earth. Command needs to know that our tactics work against Catherian bioships." An hour later, Shaw found himself in his ready room facing Admiral Chen and 3 other Council officers. The crystalline Vorthak's body was flickering with nervous energy. The Saurian colonel kept changing colors. Even the normally calm Etherian diplomat seemed disturbed. "Captain Shaw," Admiral Chen began, "we must discuss what happened during the battle." "What would you like to discuss?" Shaw asked. "We destroyed an entire Catherian fleet with minimal losses. I would call that a successful engagement." "You refuse to accept surrender," said Colonel Thress, the Saurian officer. "You hunted down retreating enemies and destroyed them without mercy. This violates every principle of civilized warfare." Shaw leaned back in his chair and studied the alien officers. They looked genuinely shocked by what they had witnessed. These beings had spent their entire lives believing that war could be conducted according to civilized rules. "Colonel," Shaw said finally, "how many battles have you won against the Catherians using civilized methods?" Thress's scales shifted to a darker color. "That is not the point. There are standards that separate us from barbarians." "No," Shaw said firmly. "There are standards that help you feel good about losing. The Catherians do not follow your rules. They enslave prisoners and corrupt captured worlds. Why should we treat them with mercy they have never shown?" "Because we are better than they are," said Commander Ilya, the Etherian diplomat. "Because maintaining our principles is more important than victory." Shaw stood up and walked to the viewport. that showed the debris field outside. Pieces of Catherian bio-ships drifted among the wreckage of human vessels. "Commander," Shaw said without turning around, "how many Council worlds have the Catherians conquered while you maintained your principles?" The question hung in the air. No one answered. Shaw turned back to face the alien officers. "The Council has been fighting this war for 3 years using civilized methods," he said. "You have lost 60 star systems and billions of lives. You have followed all your ancient codes of honor, and you have been steadily losing." He walked back to his desk and sat down. "Today, humanity fought one battle using uncivilized methods. We destroyed an entire enemy fleet without losing a single engagement. We suffered casualties, but we achieved complete victory." Shaw leaned forward, looking each alien officer in the eye. "So tell me, which approach actually protects innocent lives? Following rules that help you lose slowly, or breaking rules that help you win quickly?" Admiral Chen's crystal body stopped flickering. "You present a logical argument, Captain, but there must be limits. There must be some standards we maintain. The only standard that matters is protecting our people from extinction," Shaw replied. "Everything else is luxury we cannot afford." The meeting continued for another hour, but Shaw could see that the aliens were beginning to understand. They did not like humanity's methods, but they could not argue with the results. After the Council officers left, Shaw remained in his ready room, staring out at the stars. He knew that word of this battle would spread quickly through both the Council and the Catherian Empire. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity fought differently than any species they had encountered before. But Shaw also knew that this was just the beginning. The Catherians would adapt to human tactics, just as they had adapted to every other enemy. The war was far from over. And somewhere in the deep void between galaxies, ancient things that had slept for millennia were beginning to wake up, drawn by the scent of a conflict unlike any the galaxy had seen in 10,000 years. Dr. Sarah Chen knelt in the dust of a dead world, carefully brushing dirt away from ancient stone carvings. The planet had once been called Xerion Prime, home to a civilization that had vanished over 8,000 years ago. Now it was just another archaeological site in a galaxy full of mysteries. But Sarah was not here for normal research. She was hunting for information about something the Council databases barely mentioned, something called the Black Armada. The carvings on this wall were different from anything she had seen before. The symbols were carved deep into the stone and filled with a black substance that seemed to absorb light. Even her powerful work lamps could not illuminate the markings clearly. "Professor Chen," called her assistant, Marcus Wright. He was a young man who had volunteered for this mission despite its dangers. "I found something you need to see." Sarah stood up and walked over to where Marcus was working. He had uncovered a section of wall that showed a clear picture carved in the ancient style. The image made Sarah's blood run cold. The carving showed ships that looked like they were made of pure darkness. They had no clear shape, but seemed to flow and shift even in the static stone image. Around these dark vessels, smaller ships burned and died. At the bottom of the image, words were carved in the old universal language. "Can you read it?" Marcus asked. Sarah nodded slowly. She had spent years studying the dead languages of extinct civilizations. This particular script was from the first Galactic Empire, a civilization that had ruled most of the galaxy before mysteriously disappearing. It says, "When war consumes the light of reason, the devourers answer the call." Sarah read aloud. "They who feast upon conflict itself shall rise. From the void to silence all who disturb the peace of eternity." Marcus frowned. "That sounds like a warning, not a historical record." "It is both," Sarah said grimly. She had been finding similar warnings on a dozen different worlds over the past 3 months. All of them spoke of the same thing: ancient. ships that awakened when galactic warfare reached a certain level of intensity. Sarah's communicator beeped with an incoming message. She activated the device and saw the face of Admiral Zhang, the human officer coordinating archaeological research for the war effort. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Zhang said, "we need you to return to Earth immediately. The situation has become urgent." "What has happened?" Sarah asked. "The war is escalating beyond our projections," Zhang replied. "General Rodriguez has implemented new tactical doctrines that are proving extremely effective against the Catherians, but our deep space sensors are detecting movement in the void between galaxies." Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. "What kind of movement?" "Large objects moving at significant fractions of light speed," Zhang said. "Objects that do not appear on our instruments except as areas where starlight simply disappears. The science. Council wants to know if your research has found any reference to such things." Sarah looked back at the carved image of the dark ships. "Admiral, I need to transmit some data to you immediately, and I recommend that you order all human commanders to exercise extreme caution in their operations." "Why?" Zhang asked. "Because I think we may have awakened something that has been sleeping for 10,000 years. 2 days later, Sarah was standing in the war room on Earth, surrounded by military officers and government officials. The wall screens showed tactical displays from across the galaxy, where human forces were winning battle after battle against the Catherians. General Patricia Rodriguez stood at the center of the room, pointing at various combat zones. She was a small woman with steel-gray hair and scars from the border wars. Her reputation for ruthless efficiency had made her the perfect choice to lead humanity's war effort. "Operation Cleansing Fire has exceeded all expectations," Rodriguez was saying. "We have retaken 15 star systems in the past month. The Catherians are retreating on all fronts." Sarah watched the displays with growing concern. The human victories were impressive, but they were also brutal. She could see reports of biological weapons, psychological warfare, and tactics that would horrify the Council allies. "General," Sarah interrupted, "may I ask about the methods being used in these operations?" Rodriguez turned to look at the archaeologist. "Dr. Chen, your research is valuable, but military tactics are not your area of expertise." "Actually, they are relevant to my findings," Sarah said firmly. "The ancient warnings I have discovered all mention the same trigger for awakening the Black Armada: warfare that exceeds certain parameters of violence and scope." Admiral Zhang stepped forward. "What exactly are you suggesting, Doctor?" Sarah activated her tablet and projected images from her research onto the room's main screen. The assembled officers stared at the ancient carvings and translated texts. "Every extinct civilization I have studied mentions the Black Armada," Sarah explained. "They describe ships that exist in the void between galaxies, waiting for galactic warfare to reach a critical threshold." She pointed to specific symbols in the carvings. According to these records, the Armada awakens when 3 conditions are met. First, the war must involve multiple star systems simultaneously. Second, the conflict must include the use of weapons that corrupt or transform biological life. Third, the warfare must be conducted without regard for traditional limitations on violence. The room became very quiet. Sarah could see understanding dawn on the faces around her. "Our current operations meet all 3 criteria," Sarah continued. "We are fighting across dozens of systems. We are using biological weapons and viruses designed to attack Catherian bioships. And we have abandoned all conventional rules of warfare." General Rodriguez crossed her arms. "Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that we should allow the Catherians to win because of some ancient superstitions?" "I am suggesting that we may have awakened something far worse than the Catherians," Sarah replied. "Something that views all warfare as a threat to galactic stability." Admiral Zhang pulled up the sensor reports from the void between galaxies. "The objects our deep space arrays detected are moving toward our galaxy at approximately 15% of light speed. If they maintain that velocity, They will reach the outer rim in approximately 6 months. What do we know about these objects? Asked Colonel Martinez from the Special Operations Division. Sarah brought up another set of images on the screen. These showed ancient artwork from multiple civilizations, all depicting the same horrifying scene. According to the records, the Black Armada consists of ships from the first galactic civilization, Sarah explained. They were transformed by millennia of warfare into something beyond biological life. The texts describe them as hunger made manifest and the silence that follows the storm. She paused, looking around the room at the grim faces of Earth's military leadership. They exist to prevent any single conflict from growing large enough to threaten the stability of the galaxy, Sarah continued. They do this by destroying all participants in the war, regardless of which side they support. General Rodriguez studied the ancient images carefully. What are their capabilities? The records are vague, but they describe weapons that unmake matter at the quantum level, Sarah said. Ships that absorb all forms of electromagnetic radiation, and crews that have transcended physical existence to become something like living entropy. Admiral Zhang frowned. How were they defeated in the past? They were not defeated, Sarah said quietly. According to every record I have found, the Black Armada has never been stopped once it begins moving. Previous galactic wars ended when all participants were eliminated. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronic equipment. On the tactical displays, human forces continued their advance against the Catherian Empire, unaware that their success might have doomed the entire galaxy. General Rodriguez, Admiral Zhang said finally, I recommend that we immediately contact our forces in the field. We need to scale back our operations until we better understand this threat. Rodriguez shook her head. Admiral, we cannot stop now. We have the Catherians on the run for the first time in this war. If we pull back, they will regroup and counterattack. If we continue, we may trigger the complete destruction of galactic civilization, Sarah warned. Dr. Chen, Rodriguez said, firmly, your research is fascinating, but it deals with events that happened thousands of years ago. We are fighting a war that is happening right now. She turned to address the entire room. The Catherians have enslaved billions of people and destroyed entire civilizations. They will not stop until they control the galaxy. We cannot allow ancient fears to prevent us from protecting innocent lives. Sarah felt frustration building. Inside her, these military officers were thinking like soldiers, focused on the immediate threat while ignoring the larger consequences of their actions. General, with respect, you are not understanding the scope of this danger, Sarah said. The Black Armada does not distinguish between aggressor and defender. They will destroy human forces and Catherian forces equally. Then we will fight them too, Rodriguez replied. Humanity has faced extinction before. We survived by being tougher and more adaptable than our enemies. Admiral Zhang looked troubled. General, perhaps we should at least inform our allies about this potential threat. Absolutely not, Rodriguez said quickly. The Council forces are already nervous about our methods. If we tell them that our success might awaken some mythical ancient enemy, they will demand that we return to their failed defensive strategies. Sarah realized that the general was not going to listen to reason. The human military had tasted victory for the first time in this war, and they were not willing to give it up based on archaeological evidence. Admiral Zhang, Sarah said, I request permission to continue my research with expanded resources. If the Black Armada is truly awakening, we need to learn everything we can about their capabilities and weaknesses. Granted, Zhang replied. Take whatever personnel and equipment you need. As the meeting broke up, Sarah gathered her research materials with a heavy heart. She understood the general's position, but she also knew that the ancient warnings were not superstition. Too many civilizations had left too many consistent records for the Black Armada to be mere legend. Over the following weeks, Sarah threw herself into her research with desperate intensity. She visited archaeological sites across Council space, often working in systems where the war was still raging. The ancient records painted a consistent picture of a force that existed solely to prevent galactic warfare from reaching critical levels. Meanwhile, human forces continued their devastating campaign against the Catherian Empire. General Rodriguez had implemented what she called total war doctrine, which abandoned all restraints on weapons and tactics. Human ships used biological agents that turned Catherian biovessels against their own crews. They deployed nanoscale weapons that corrupted Catherian cybernetic implants. Most disturbing of all, they had begun using captured Catherian psychic warriors as weapons against their own people. The results were undeniably effective. The Catherian Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. But with each victory, the human methods became more extreme and more ruthless. Sarah watched the war reports with growing dread. The level of violence and technological corruption was exactly what the ancient warnings described as the trigger for the Black Armada's awakening. Her fears were confirmed when deep space sensors detected the first signs of arrival. Dark objects began appearing at the edge of the galaxy, moving inward with inexorable purpose. They did not respond to any attempts at communication. They simply absorbed all electromagnetic radiation directed at them, creating areas of absolute darkness. In space, the Black Armada was coming home after 10,000 years of slumber, and when they arrived, they would find a galaxy at war in ways that violated every ancient limitation on violence and destruction. Sarah sent one final report to Admiral Jang, detailing everything she had learned about the approaching threat. Then she began preparing for the possibility that galactic civilization was about to face its greatest test. In the deep void between star systems, ships older than most civilizations moved steadily toward the inhabited galaxy. They had awakened to the scent of warfare that exceeded all parameters of acceptable conflict. They were coming to restore the silence of eternity, no matter how many worlds burned in the process. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing horror. The first Black Armada vessels had reached the outer rim of the galaxy 3 days ago. Since then, they had destroyed everything in their path, with casual efficiency that defied understanding. Report from the Kepler Defense Fleet, his communications officer announced. All 12 vessels destroyed. No survivors detected. Chen's crystal body dimmed with despair. The Kepler fleet had been one of the most powerful formations in Council space, equipped with the latest defensive technology. The Black Armada had eliminated it in under 10 minutes. Any word from the human forces in that sector? Chen asked. The U.S. Defiance attempted to engage the enemy, came the reply. Captain Shaw's ship was destroyed with all hands. The human escort vessels retreated after taking heavy casualties. Chen processed this information with growing dread. If the human fleet could not stand against the Black Armada, then nothing in the galaxy could. The ancient enemy had arrived with technology that made even Catherian bioships seem primitive. The main screen activated, showing a communication from Earth. General Rodriguez appeared, her face grim but determined. Admiral Chen, Rodriguez said without preamble. We need to coordinate our remaining forces immediately. The Black Armada is not discriminating between human and Council vessels. General, our preliminary reports suggest that conventional weapons are completely ineffective against these entities, Chen replied. Energy weapons simply disappear when they strike their hulls. Kinetic projectiles pass through them as if they were not there. Rodriguez nodded grimly. Our analysis confirms your observations. The Black Armada ships seem to exist partially outside normal spacetime. They can interact with our universe when they choose to, but our weapons cannot consistently affect them. On Chen's tactical display, new reports were arriving every few minutes. Black Armada vessels had appeared in 17 different star systems simultaneously. They moved through space in perfect formation, ignoring all attempts at communication, while systematically destroying every military vessel they encountered. General, Chen said carefully, Perhaps it is time to consider alternative solutions to this crisis. Such as, Rodriguez asked. Chen's crystal body flickered with nervous energy. What he was about to suggest went against every principle of civilized warfare. But the situation had moved far beyond normal considerations. Dr. Chen's research indicates that the Black Armada awakens in response to warfare that exceeds certain parameters, Chen said. Perhaps if we cease all military operations and attempt to negotiate— Negotiate with what? Rodriguez interrupted. The Black Armada has not responded to any communication attempts. They attack human and Catherian forces equally. This is not a political conflict, Admiral. This is an extinction event. Chen knew she was right, but the alternative was almost unthinkable. Then what do you propose? Rodriguez's expression hardened. We fight. We adapt. We find a way to win. With what weapons? Chen asked. Our most advanced technology cannot even scratch their hulls. Then we develop new technology, Rodriguez said simply. Humanity has faced extinction before. We survived by refusing to accept defeat. The communication ended, leaving Chen alone with his desperate thoughts. The general's confidence was admirable, but Chen had seen the sensor readings from the encounters with the Black Armada. Their ships defied known physics. They seemed to absorb energy attacks and convert them into fuel for their own systems. Kinetic weapons passed through their hulls without causing damage. Even nuclear explosions merely created brief flashes of light before being absorbed into the darkness. A new alert sounded on the bridge. Chen looked at the tactical display and felt his crystal matrix nearly shatter with shock. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we are receiving a communication. Request from a Catherian vessel. Which vessel? Chen asked, though he could hardly believe what he was hearing. The flagship of war-singer Thessian, came the reply. The same commander who led the attack on Epsilon Reticuli. Chen stared at the display in amazement. Thessian's bioship was approaching the Council fleet under a flag of truce. The Catherian Empire had been humanity's bitter enemy for over 3 years. Now they were requesting a meeting. Put them through, Chen ordered. The main screen shifted to show Thessian's pale, elongated features. The Catherian commander looked different than before. The arrogant confidence was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like fear. Admiral Chen of the Council Forces, Thessian said formally. I request permission to communicate with the human military leadership. For what purpose? Chen asked. Thessian's glowing eyes flickered with what might have been desperation. The Black Armada has destroyed 6 of our core worlds and eliminated over half of our battle fleets. Our bioships are as helpless against them as your vessels. Chen felt a strange mix of satisfaction and concern. The Catherians were finally experiencing the fear they had inflicted on so many other species. But if even their advanced biotechnology could not stand against the Black Armada, the situation was truly hopeless. What are you proposing? Chen asked. An alliance, Thessian said bluntly. Our peoples have been enemies, but we face extinction from a common threat. The Black Armada will not stop until all warfare in this galaxy has been eliminated. That means destroying everyone who has participated in any military conflict. Chen considered this carefully. The idea of allying with the Catherians was repugnant, but it might be the only way to survive the next few days. I will relay your request to General Rodriguez, Chen said finally, but I cannot speak for human command decisions. 3 hours. Later, Chen found himself in an unprecedented situation. His flagship was docked with both a human battle cruiser and a Catherian bioship. In the conference room, representatives of 3 species that had been at war for years were now discussing cooperation against a common enemy. General Rodriguez had arrived personally, accompanied by Captain Hayes and Dr. Sarah Chen. Thessian brought 2 other Catherian commanders and a being that looked more machine than organic. The council delegation included Admiral Chen, Colonel Thress, and Commander Ilya. "Let me be clear about our situation," Rodriguez began without ceremony. "The Black Armada has destroyed everything we have sent against them. Traditional weapons are useless. Traditional tactics are meaningless. We need new approaches." Thessian leaned forward, his pale features serious. "Our bioships have capabilities that your technology lacks. We can interface directly with living systems. We can adapt our weapons during combat. But none of this matters against an enemy that exists partially outside normal space." Dr. Sarah Chen activated a holographic display showing her research data. According to the ancient records, the Black Armada consists of ships from the first galactic civilization. They were transformed by warfare into something beyond normal matter. She pointed to specific sections of the translated texts. "The records describe them as hunger made manifest," Sarah continued. "They feed on conflict itself, growing stronger with each battle they fight. But they also suggest a possible weakness." Everyone in the room leaned forward with interest. "The ancient texts mention that the Black Armada exists to maintain the silence of eternity," Sarah explained. "They awaken when warfare exceeds acceptable parameters, but they return to dormancy when the threat to galactic stability has been eliminated." "Meaning what exactly?" asked Colonel Thress. "Meaning they might withdraw if they believe the current conflict has ended," Sarah said. "But achieving that would require something unprecedented." Rodriguez frowned. "What kind of unprecedented?" Sarah looked around the room at the assembled representatives of 3 species that had been killing each other for years. "It would require the complete cessation of all military operations by every faction in the galaxy," she said. "Not just a temporary truce, but a genuine end to the war itself." The room fell silent. Chen could see each delegate struggling with the implications of Sarah's suggestion. "You are asking us to surrender to our enemies," Thessian said finally. "I am asking you to choose survival over victory," Sarah replied. "The Black Armada does not care who wins this war. They will destroy all participants equally." Commander Ilya spoke up. "Dr. Chen, even if we agreed to such a proposal, how could we trust our enemies to honor it? The moment one side begins rearming, the others would follow." "Because none of us will survive long enough to rearm if we do not try this," Rodriguez said bluntly. "The Black Armada is eliminating our forces faster than we can replace them. At current rates, all 3 of our civilizations will be extinct within 2 months. Thessian's cybernetic implants flickered as he processed this information. "You propose a permanent end to hostilities between the Empire and the Council forces?" "I propose whatever it takes to survive," Rodriguez replied. "Our species can settle their differences later, assuming any of us live that long." Admiral Chen found himself in the strange position of mediating between his former enemies. The question is whether such a cessation would actually work. "Dr. Chen, do the ancient records provide any details about how the Black Armada determines when a conflict has ended?" Sarah consulted her tablet, scrolling through translated texts from dozens of extinct civilizations. "The records are not specific," she admitted, "but they suggest that the Black Armada monitors galactic warfare through methods we do not understand. They seem to detect not just military actions, but the intent to continue fighting. Meaning they would know if we were planning to resume hostilities after they withdraw," Rodriguez said. "That is the implication," Sarah confirmed. The delegates spent the next several hours working out the details of an unprecedented agreement. A complete cessation of military operations by all factions. The withdrawal of all armed forces to designated neutral zones. Most difficult of all, the establishment of monitoring systems to ensure that no side was secretly preparing for renewed conflict. It was an agreement that would have been impossible under any other circumstances. Only the threat of complete extinction could force such bitter enemies to consider genuine peace. But even as they negotiated, reports continued to arrive of Black Armada victories. The ancient ships moved through the galaxy like a plague, destroying everything in their path with weapons that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. "Sir," Chen's communications officer interrupted the meeting. "Priority message from the Outer Rim defense stations." Chen activated the communication system. The face of a terrified human officer appeared on the screen. "This is Captain Williams, of the Defense Platform Alpha," the officer said. "The Black Armada has broken through all outer defenses. They are moving toward the core systems at maximum speed. Estimated time of arrival at Earth, 72 hours. The room became deadly quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. They had less than 3 days to implement their unprecedented alliance, or all of their civilizations would be destroyed. "Captain Williams," Rodriguez said, "relay the following message to all human forces. Cease all offensive operations immediately. All ships are to withdraw to the coordinates I am transmitting now." She turned to Thessian. "Warsinger, will your empire honor this agreement?" Thessian's glowing eyes met hers. "The Empire will comply. Our survival depends on it." Admiral Chen activated his own communication system. "All Council forces, this is Admiral Chen. Implement immediate ceasefire protocols. All vessels are to stand down and withdraw to neutral positions." As the orders went out across the galaxy, the 3 former enemies could only hope that their desperate gamble would work. The Black Armada was coming, and conventional warfare had proven useless against them. Now they would discover whether the ancient enemy could be satisfied with the promise of peace, or whether the galaxy was truly doomed to silence. The ceasefire held for exactly 18 hours. Admiral Shaw, commanding the joint Human-Catherian Council fleet from his new flagship, watched the tactical displays with growing desperation. Despite the unprecedented alliance, despite the complete cessation of hostilities between the former enemies, the Black Armada continued its relentless advance toward the core systems. "Status report," Shaw ordered his communications officer. "The Black Armada has destroyed the Centauri defense grid and the Vegan shipyards," came the reply. "They are not slowing down. Current projections show them reaching Earth in 48 hours. Shaw felt a cold certainty settle in his chest. The ancient enemy was not interested in peace. They had come to end the war by ending everyone who had participated in it. The main screen activated, showing the faces of his unlikely allies. Warsinger Thessian appeared from his bio-ship, his pale features tense with barely controlled fear. Admiral Chen's crystal body flickered with agitated energy from the Council flagship. "The cessation of hostilities has failed," Thessian stated bluntly. "The Black Armada continues to eliminate our forces despite our alliance." Dr. Chen's interpretation of the ancient records was incorrect, Admiral Chen added. "The Black Armada is not interested in ending the current conflict. They intend to eliminate all species capable of warfare." Shaw nodded grimly. He had been expecting this outcome. In his experience, desperate situations rarely had easy solutions. "Then we return to the only option we have left," Shaw said. "We fight." "With what?" Thessian demanded. "Our most powerful weapons cannot penetrate their defenses. Their ships absorb our energy attacks and ignore our kinetic projectiles." Shaw leaned forward, his expression becoming intense. "Warsinger, you said your bio-ships can interface with living systems. Can they interface with non-living systems as well?" Thessian frowned. "Our biological technology can integrate with certain types of machinery. Why do you ask?" "Because I have an idea," Shaw said. "Something so dangerous that even my own species would consider it madness." Admiral Chen's crystal body pulsed with nervous light. "Admiral Shaw, what are you proposing?" Shaw activated his tactical display, showing the positions of all remaining forces in the galaxy. Human ships, Catherian biovessels, and Council fleets were scattered across dozens of systems, all retreating before the Black Armada's advance. "We have approximately 40,000 warships remaining between all our forces," Shaw said. "Individually, they are useless against the Black Armada. But if we could coordinate them perfectly— He paused, letting the implications sink in. You want to concentrate our entire fleet for a single massive engagement, Thessian said. That would be suicide. The Black Armada would destroy us all at once instead of piecemeal. Not if we do it right, Shaw replied. The ancient records mention that the Black Armada exists partially outside normal space-time. But that means they must have some kind of anchor point in our reality. Shaw brought up Dr. Sarah Chen's research data on the main display. Dr. Chen, you studied every reference to the Black Armada in the archaeological record. Did any of the texts mention how they maintain their existence in our universe? Dr. Chen appeared on the screen from her research ship. She looked exhausted but determined. There are references to nodes of darkness that anchor their fleet to normal space, she said. The ancient texts describe them as points where space-time itself has been corrupted by eons of warfare. Nodes that can be destroyed? Shaw asked. Theoretically, yes, Sarah replied, but it would require an enormous amount of energy focused on a very specific point in space-time, the kind of energy that could only be generated by— She stopped, understanding what Shaw was suggesting. By detonating every remaining warship in the galaxy simultaneously, Shaw finished, in a precisely coordinated pattern that would create a cascade failure in local space-time. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the background hum of ship systems seemed to fade as the three commanders processed what Shaw was proposing. You are talking about the complete destruction of all military forces in the galaxy, Admiral Chen said finally. Every ship, every crew, every weapon system. Yes, Shaw said simply. That would include our own vessels, Thessian pointed out. We would all die in the attempt. Yes, Shaw repeated. And there is no guarantee that such an attack would actually work, Chen added. No, Shaw admitted. There is no guarantee of anything except that we will all die anyway, if we do nothing. Shaw stood up and walked to the viewport of his ship. Outside, he could see the running lights of Allied vessels from 3 different species. Ships that had been killing each other just days ago were now flying in formation, united by desperation. War singer Thessian, Shaw said without turning around. Can your bioships create a psychic network that links all 40,000 vessels? Something that would allow perfect coordination of their self-destruct sequences? Thessian was quiet for a long moment. Such a network would require the voluntary participation of every crew member on every ship. The psychic strain would be enormous. Many would die from the mental feedback alone. Admiral Chen, Shaw continued, can your crystal technology calculate the precise timing needed to create a space-time cascade? Something that would propagate through multiple dimensions simultaneously. Chen's body flickered rapidly as he processed the mathematical requirements. The calculations are possible, but they would require the combined processing power of every AI system in our fleets. The computational load would burn out most of our computer cores. Shaw turned back to face his allies. Dr. Chen, based on your research, what are the chances that this plan would actually destroy the Black Armada? Sarah looked at her data for several minutes before answering. Based on the ancient texts and our current understanding of their technology, perhaps 20%. And if we do nothing? Shaw asked. 0% chance of survival, Sarah replied immediately. Shaw nodded. Then we proceed with what I designate as Protocol Omega, the complete destruction of all military forces in a coordinated attack designed to damage space-time itself. Over the next 24 hours, the most complex military operation in galactic history began to take shape. Human engineers worked alongside Catherian biotechnicians to create hybrid systems that could link organic and mechanical technologies. Council scientists collaborated with Earth physicists to calculate the precise positioning needed for each vessel. The plan required every ship to position itself at a specific point in space, timed to the nanosecond. The Catherian psychic network would coordinate the crews, while the Council AI systems calculated the optimal detonation sequence. Human tactical doctrine would provide the underlying strategy. Shaw found himself working more closely with his former enemies than he ever had, with his own allies. The urgency of their situation had stripped away all pretense and politics. They were no longer human, Cytherian, or council. They were simply the last hope for galactic civilization. "Admiral," his communications officer announced, "the Black Armada has reached the Sol system. They are beginning their attack on the outer defense platforms." Shaw looked at the tactical display showing his home system under assault. Earth's mighty defense grid, built over decades with the best technology humanity could produce, was being systematically destroyed. Each platform died without managing to inflict any damage on the attackers. "How much longer do we need?" Shaw asked his tactical team. 12 more hours to complete the positioning calculations," replied Commander Hayes. "The ships are moving into formation, but the coordination requirements are incredibly complex." "We do not have 12 hours, Thessian interjected from his bioship. "The Black Armada will reach Earth itself within 6 hours. If they destroy the planet, billions of humans will die." Shaw felt the weight of command pressing down on him. Every decision he made now would determine whether galactic civilization survived or died. There was no margin for error, no second chances. "We implement Protocol Omega in 6 hours, Shaw decided. "Ready or not." The next few hours passed in frantic preparation. Ships that had been designed to fight each other were now linked together, in an intricate web of technology and telepathy. Cytherian bioships merged their organic systems with human computers and council crystal matrices. The resulting hybrid network was unlike anything that had ever existed. Shaw stood on his bridge, watching reports from across the galaxy as 40,000 warships moved into their assigned positions. Each vessel was now a precisely placed component in a weapon designed to wound space-time itself. "Admiral," Dr. Chen's voice came through the communication system. "I have completed my analysis of the ancient texts. There is something you need to know about Protocol Omega." "What is it?" Shaw asked. "The weapon we are creating will not just destroy the Black Armada," Sarah said quietly. "It will scar several star systems permanently. The space-time damage will create areas where normal physics no longer apply. Entire regions of the galaxy may become uninhabitable." Shaw absorbed this information without changing expression. "How many systems?" "Potentially dozens," Sarah replied. "The cascade effect is unpredictable once it begins." Shaw looked around his bridge at the crew members who had volunteered to die with him. Young men and women who would never see their families again. Officers who had given up everything for a chance to save their species. "The alternative is the destruction of all intelligent life in the galaxy," Shaw said finally. "We proceed." The final hour arrived with devastating news from Earth. The Black Armada had broken through the planet's defenses and was beginning the systematic elimination of all life on humanity's homeworld. Billions of people were dying while Shaw watched, helplessly from across the galaxy. "All ships report ready," Commander Hayes announced. "The psychic network is stable. AI systems are synchronized. Detonation sequence calculated and programmed." Shaw activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would be heard on every ship in the combined armada, translated into dozens of languages, and transmitted through both technological and psychic channels. "This is Admiral Shaw to all vessels," he said. "Today we face the end of everything we have fought to protect. The Black Armada threatens not just our civilizations, but all future possibility of life in this galaxy." He paused, looking out at the stars one last time. "We go now to our deaths, but we do not go quietly. We go as warriors of 3 species who chose to stand together when the universe itself turned against us. We go knowing that our sacrifice may save billions of lives we will never meet." Shaw took a deep breath. "Execute Protocol Omega. All ships detonate on my mark." The psychic network carried the countdown through 40,000 minds simultaneously. Human determination, Cytherian resolve, and council logic merged into a single purpose. Mark. Across dozens of star systems, 40,000 warships exploded simultaneously. The detonations were precisely timed and positioned to create a cascade, effect that propagated through multiple dimensions of space-time. The weapon worked exactly as planned. The coordinated explosions created a massive disruption in the fabric of reality itself. Space-time buckled and twisted around the Black Armada's anchor points, trapping their vessels in collapsed dimensional bubbles. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Black Armada found themselves facing an enemy they could not simply absorb or ignore. The space-time damage created by Protocol Omega existed outside their ability to interface with normal reality. The ancient ships, caught in the cascade failure of local physics, were effectively erased from existence, not destroyed in any conventional sense, but removed from the universe entirely. The victory came at a terrible cost. Every military vessel in the galaxy was gone. Millions of crew members had died in the coordinated detonation. Entire star systems were now scarred by space-time anomalies that would persist for millennia. But galactic civilization survived. In the aftermath, as the survivors surveyed the devastation, a new understanding emerged among the species of the galaxy. They had learned that their greatest strength lay not in their individual technologies or tactics, but in their ability to unite against existential threats. The war between humanity, the Cytherian Empire, and the Council forces was officially ended by mutual agreement. The three species, having faced extinction together, found that their previous conflicts seemed petty in comparison to what they had survived. Admiral Shaw's final message, transmitted in the seconds before Protocol Omega was executed, became the foundation for a new galactic constitution. We have learned that desperation can make any species capable of anything. Today, we chose to be capable of sacrifice, cooperation, and hope. May future generations remember that the galaxy belongs to all who call it home. The galaxy would never forget the day when humanity entered the battle and the Black Armada stirred once more. It would also never forget the day when three species chose to die together rather than live apart in fear. In the deepest classified archives of each surviving civilization, a single entry was made. Protocol Omega successful. Black Armada contained. The price of peace is eternal vigilance, and sometimes eternal sacrifice.